What's good, Maryville? Welcome back to the Droppin Dimes podcast. I'm your host, Noah Cooper, joined as I am every week by my co-host, Perry Randle, here on the Droppin Dimes podcast. This week we got a lot for you guys. More importantly, the Warriors drama and their recent 3-game slide, how Jimmy Butler's working on the Philadelphia 76ers, some of the surprise teams and surprise players we got this season, and also the recent moves that the Wizards announced that they're trying to make. But first, here's Kevin Love and Dame Dalla on the Droppin Dimes podcast.
Drip, drip, drop.
Droppin Dimes, Droppin Dimes.
Baby Dame Dollar here, trailblazing dimes everywhere. I don't want to boast, but I'm dropping dimes from coast to coast. Dropping dimes everywhere, like I just don't care. I'm dropping dimes on the bike, on the stairs. I'm even dropping dimes on my teddy bear.
Welcome back here to the Droppin Dimes podcast. I'm Noah Cooper, joined by Perry Randle. How we doing this week, Perry?
It's a beautiful day to be beautiful. We're a couple days away from greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes in full effect. So I'm excited. But plus, we got all the drama that you mentioned earlier. We got all the Warriors drama that I want to talk about. So there's a lot of stuff to eat before Thanksgiving. So let's get to eating,
We're getting closer and closer to Thanksgiving every day. It's a beautiful Monday morning, 11 o'clock a.m. as we're recording this podcast right now. And I think some of the biggest news out there right now in the NBA is obviously the recent Golden State Warriors slide that they've been on. Right now, they've lost 3 in a row. Everything was looking up for them last week as they were sitting atop the NBA and atop the Western Conference. But recently, they've gone 5-5 in their last 10 games, including that 3-game slide, like I just mentioned. And that 3-game slide they lost to the Rockets, got killed by the Rockets down there in Houston, lost to the Mavericks by 3, and then barely lost to the Spurs yesterday by 12. They kind of blew it there down the stretch, and the Warriors have just been struggling recently. Last week we had that Draymond Green and Kevin Durant drama against the Clippers where they lost to the Clippers in overtime, and the Clippers looking like a great team as of late, but ever since that little drama and then Steph Curry being out with his injury, it just seems like the Warriors haven't been able to pull anything together. And like Steve Kerr said, he feels like this is their biggest adversity they've had to face here in their dynasty that they've had going on right now.
If people did not know who the most important player on this team was to the Warriors' success, then they should know now that it is for sure Stephen Curry, just because of the energy he's bringing whenever he's making three-pointers. Clearly, he's a great leader, and he rallies all these guys because we know that Draymond Green can bring the energy as far as the defensive side goes. And then, KD, he can get a bucket at will, 7-foot cheat code. But you still need that energy, the game changer, the greatest three-point shooter of all time. Clay, he's pretty quiet, but Curry, when he hits a three, you see him shimmy, point up to the sky a little bit. So that just tells me that his energy that Curry brings every single game is so important to the Warriors' success. Because without him, as we've seen, they're struggling. They lost the last 3 and they lost 4 out of the 5 last games. So
people are trying to say that Kevin Durant has somehow passed LeBron James. I want to see Kevin Durant be that type of leader that can lead this Warriors team through the adversity, not be one of the main people that are in the biggest fight that's going on right now between him and Draymond Green. And like you said, I feel like this has now emerged as a team that really shows that they need Steph Curry out there to be very successful, and Steph Curry is the glue that kind of holds this all together. So now when he's out with the injury, add this onto the other drama, add this onto the team not probably being as deep as they were last season at this time, then you're going to have a lot of issues, especially now with Draymond sitting out the last couple of games, especially with Kevin Durant. He hasn't even hit a 3 since the Clippers game. And obviously when you don't have Kevin Durant hitting a 3 in 4 games now, there's going to be some issues there too. I just want to see Kevin Durant step up to be that leader that we all expect him to be in this time with all this drama going on with the team.
And one of the best things about Steph Curry is his movement without the ball, because then that's when it creates opportunities for players like Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant to get open for 3, to all these off-ball screens, because defenders have to worry about not only Steph Curry setting the screen, but also the player that's coming off the screen. But there's some truth to what Draymond said to Kevin Durant in that little argument they had against the Clippers. He said that we didn't need you. We already won without you to get a title, and that's the truth. And then who was the best player on that team whenever they did win? It was Stephen Curry. So this just tells me the importance of Stephen Curry. Now, let's be honest, to everybody who's worried, there is no reason to worry. All the greatest teams, they have adversity the Bulls team, they had adversity with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, all those guys. We know about Michael Jordan punching John Paxson in the face, not giving a rat's patoot about him. And then we also know about Kobe and Shaq. They won 3 straight titles, but the whole time they was arguing like an upset dad and an upset wife. It was just crazy.
This happens with every dynasty.
It
seems like it's just a part of it. And I feel like, and I said this to you on the show as well, that I feel like this kind of marks the beginning of the end in a lot of dynasties. I feel like this whole Draymond Green and Kevin Durant thing wasn't your average media blowing up a story to be bigger than it actually is. I feel like this is actually a story that is bigger than it looked on the court, and I feel like there's a lot of stuff behind it when you got Kevin Durant's looming free agency as well. I feel like that's something that has to be considered. And now in the recent couple weeks, you're hearing all these rumored stories about maybe Kevin wants to go out to New York in the offseason. Maybe Kevin wants to join the Clippers in the offseason. And this is something I wasn't really hearing a lot of rumors about 3-4 weeks ago. But now the rumors have been starting to boil up. Then you got this drama, and now the rumors are really heating up. So this is something that obviously Kevin's probably going to be considering in the offseason, and it's just all going to come down to the Warriors winning the title. Do I think they will still win the title? Yes. I think they could be 5 games under 500 right now, and I'd still think they'd win the title, you know? This doesn't happen with a lot of teams this good to where even when they're struggling, everyone still thinks that they're going to win the title every year. And I still think this team's going to win the title right now, but I do think this is an issue that's bigger than it may seem on the outside, and I feel like this may be the beginning of the end right now for the Warriors.
It's definitely possible. I'm not sure what I think about this whole entire thing between Draymond and Kevin Durant, but I think that for the people that are worried, they should be more worried when this one guy named Boogie Cousins comes back, a guy that can get you 50 and 25 on any given night. When he comes back, just think about the ego that this man has. He needs the ball to be effective within himself. So they should be conscious that if they're worried about everything that's going on with Kevin Durant, then they should definitely be worried about when Boogie Cousins come back. But I don't think there's anything to worry about. Steve Kerr is a great coach. He's won with the Bulls, with the Spurs. You know, he knows how to get great players to work together because he's always been a great role player. So I think when Curry comes back and whenever all this media stuff dies down, I think the Warriors will be okay because I just want to make sure, is the media still going to be talking about this if they're winning? It's easy to talk about this when teams are losing, but will they be talking about this when they're winning? I don't think so.
Well, it's like time and time again, we always say the Warriors still have all that talent. It's going to be hard to lose when you have that much talent on one roster. When you have 5 All-Stars on your roster, you got a Finals MVP coming off the bench in the later half of his career. You still got all these great guys on their team. It's going to be hard to lose down the stretch. I want to move on a little bit, talk about some other NBA news while we have the time. I think one of the biggest stories from a little over a week ago now is Jimmy Butler transitioning, getting traded to the Philadelphia 76ers. I think we've seen Jimmy blossom on the Sixers here in the last couple of days that he's been on the team. They had a rough game against the Magic in that first game. A team that's won 3 games in a row right now and sitting above 500. I think that's one of the surprise teams so far out of the year. But after that loss to the Magic that the Sixers had and that blown lead they've had, they've overcome that and beat the Jazz and then beat the Hornets on a night where Kemba went out for 60 in overtime. So I really like how Jimmy Butler's working on this Philadelphia 76ers team, and I'm looking forward to see how this team improves over time with Jimmy Butler on the roster.
I want to talk about that Magic team just a little bit.
Hey, we can get to that. We're talking about surprise teams next. So
didn't they have a good start last year?
I think they did have a good start.
All right, I'm not worried about them. All right,
hey, one more year, they're getting that experience.
Stop it. Now, back to the Sixers. I'm excited for the Sixers. I think it is great to have all these guys who are focused on winning. I love Ben Simmons' attitude, him, Joel Embiid. Now you have Jimmy Butler. They gave up Robert Covington and Dario Saric to the Timberwolves in order to get Jimmy Butler. So I am a big fan of the move. However, I don't know if this is a win for the Sixers yet. Of course, you got a two-way superstar in Jimmy Butler as an addition to the team, but I don't know if this is a win yet. Just because you add talent to the team does not mean you're automatically going to win. So as far as the first game that they had against the Magic where they lost, Terrence Ross, he put the game away with a late 3 dagger. I wouldn't worry about that if I'm a Sixers fan. I still think that this could possibly work. However, what I'm concerned about is Jimmy Butler and all the touches that they have on this team. Will it be enough for Ben Simmons to be effective? Will it be enough for Jimmy Butler to be happy? And will it be enough for Joel Embiid to continue to play that he's had all season? Because he's played like an MVP in my opinion. But I just don't know, because in that first loss, Ben Simmons, he had almost a triple single, and he's used to triple doubles, man. I think he had 9, 3, and 6 against the Magic, and that's not the numbers that you want out of him, especially a guy that can't shoot. He can't throw a rock in the oceans, let's be honest. But if Jimmy Butler can have the type of game, because what he had, and when he hit that game winner against the Hornets a couple nights ago, that's the type of game that I think they need to keep on trying to repeat in order to win games, because Jimmy Butler, he's used to having the ball, shooting the ball probably good 25 times per night. But now that you're playing with 2 other all-stars, he's going to have to be able to start to be a little more unselfish. Not saying that he is a selfish player, because I don't think so. But I still think that's important for him to make sure that Ben Simmons is still effective. Allow him to create opportunities for you, because Jimmy Butler is an off-the-dribble type of player. So I just think it's important that they make sure that all the touches for each player is equal or enough to satisfy them.
You know, when looking at this team overall, I really like the trade for both teams. I like it for the Timberwolves because they needed to get Butler off the roster. I think Tibbs finally recognized that they needed to get him off as soon as possible.
Baby.
You know, and they got back a couple solid role players in Covington and Saric. They can really get it done for them. They can really make up some of the loss that they have from Jimmy Butler, and it seems like they've done that so far. The Timberwolves have had a couple impressive wins since that trade. They did lose last night, but last night's loss, I wouldn't say it's really a horrible loss, because it was to the Grizzlies, who are literally second in the Western Conference right now, tied with the Warriors. So getting that big win over the Pelicans and getting that win over the Trailblazers, that they got 2 solid teams out in the Western Conference, I feel like you can't quite yet count out the Timberwolves, even though it's going to come down to a close race in the Western Conference. Now, in the East, the Philadelphia 76ers picking up Butler, I love that move for them, because I feel like you're not going to ever win a championship with Saric and Covington on your roster, with the roster construction that they had. Whereas I feel like Jimmy Butler gives you that extra piece and gives you that really solid big 3 that you're looking for in Philadelphia. They do need a 5th starter out there. I feel like they're 1 starter short. I feel like Redick, Butler, Embiid, and Simmons all together is a really solid group, but they still need that one last piece. And I think Elton Brand had said in the press conference after Butler that they are still looking for that final piece, and they're really going to push after getting that 5th piece, whether it comes near the trade deadline, whether it comes near buyouts, whenever it comes from, but they're still looking for that piece. But I've really liked Butler's addition, also because of the presence that he brings on the floor as that all-star piece. They're getting that 3rd all-star that they need on their team. We saw him come up huge in that game against the Jazz. In his first game in Philadelphia, he only missed 3 shots to get 28 points, so he was super efficient against the Jazz, a Jazz team that's been struggling lately. And then the next game against the Hornets, like he said after the game, he didn't do an amazing job of defense, obviously, because Kemba had 60, but he still came up big to hit that game winner down the stretch. And I feel like that's something that Philadelphia needed. They needed that extra guy to, down the stretch, be like, it's my time to get it done. Give the ball to me and, let me work and let me get that shot. And that's exactly what he did to come up with the win in overtime against the Hornets.
Well, one of my coaches from high school, he always used to say that communication hides deficiencies. And I think that this could be a really big trait that this team could have, because of course they have the talent, but I think all these guys' personalities can kind of fit together as long as that they're unselfish.
It looks like Butler's having a fun time on this team, and it looks like he's having a lot better of a time than he was out there in Minnesota, I'll tell you that. I was kind of wary. I didn't know how it would necessarily work with having these 3 guys on the court together. I wasn't sure how the chemistry issues would work. Obviously, there's only one ball out there, and Embiid, Simmons, and Butler all like to have the ball in their hands quite a bit. But judging off these last 2 games and these last 2 games alone, I think that it's worked out pretty well so far, but obviously we still need to wait here a few more weeks to see how it's going to turn out in the long term right now.
So do you see my man Carmelo Anthony fitting in with this team?
Definitely not. I think that's exactly who they don't need on the team right now. Now, if we want to talk about Carmelo a little bit, let's talk about Carmelo just a little bit. We talked about him quite a bit on the show. He hasn't quite yet been placed onto waivers yet by the Rockets, but the Rockets have essentially let him go. He's not going to be playing any more games for him. And the Sixers are one of the teams that have kind of emerged a little bit that might be looking after a guy like Carmelo. And while I don't think Carmelo deserves quite all of the flack that he's received recently, I don't know if the Philadelphia 76ers... I'm still a little bit of a hater. I don't know if the 76ers are a good fit for him right now in his career.
Just say it like it is.
I really think the Knicks are probably one of the best options for him right now at this point.
Man, my man has got enough. He's secured enough bags over his career. He's trying to get a ring. The Knicks are not going to get him a ring.
And I don't think championship teams want to pick him up, as we've seen now with the Warriors not wanting to pick him up, not getting any news right now from the Lakers wanting to pick him up. I just don't know if that's something the championship teams are looking after. They've seen how it's worked out in Oklahoma City. They've seen the destruction that it caused there. They saw the destruction that it caused out in Houston and how much better Houston's playing without him. And championship teams are probably looking at it like, you know what, maybe this guy can't really help us out in the long term because he hasn't really accepted that role as a guy that comes off the bench and is successful coming off the bench, because he hasn't really been successful coming off the bench here now in these last two seasons.
Kyrie Irving said that they need a 14-year vet.
I saw that, and I wouldn't necessarily be that mad with him going on the Celtics, mainly because you got Brad Stevens as a coach, and I feel like Brad Stevens can really get through to Melo and maybe help mold him into being a great bench player in the latter half of his career. But right now, I don't really know what the move is for Melo because, like I said, I've been very critical of Melo in the past, but I don't think he deserves all of the flack that he's gotten. People really forget that for 8 to 10 years, he was one of the top 5, top 10 best players in the NBA. He was one of the biggest guys in the entire league, and people are acting like, I saw a whole bunch of pictures of all the money he's made throughout his entire career, and people are saying that he's one of the most overpaid guys. Like, are you forgetting that this man was one of the top 5 MVP candidates for multiple seasons throughout his career? He deserves the money that he's gotten. Now, maybe that second stint in New York, signing that massive contract where he could have gone to a championship team, a lot of people at that point thought that he cared more about money than he did about actually winning. But this is a guy that's done it throughout his career. He's been there in big-time moments. I just don't know where he sits at this point in his career, what would be a good fit for him, honestly, at this point.
Look, he's number 22 all-time as far as scoring goes. Like you said earlier, a lot of people forget that this man is a walking bucket. Now,
he's a future Hall of Famer.
Future Hall of Famer for sure. In my opinion, the greatest basketball Olympian of all time. However,
dang near.
I do not know, like you said, I don't know if there's a place for him to stay in this league. I think it's time for him to either call Ice Cube for the big three or it's time for him to go overseas if he still wants to play basketball.
It's like in the back of my mind, I know he can still be productive. I know that in the NBA, he can still have productive minutes off the bench. He just needs to somehow...
He needs the right situation.
Yeah, he just needs the right situation. And he needs to make shots, too. I really thought that last year in Oklahoma City was the right situation for him because he really just needs to, stand there in the corner, stand there on the wing, get the ball thrown to him from Russell Westbrook off a double team and then can a three. But he couldn't make any three-pointers last season. I really don't know if three-pointers is really necessarily his game. His game throughout his career is kind of the back you down from 15 feet, spin move, get to the basket, or do that fadeaway mid-range shot. I feel like mid-range is more of his game than three-point shots. So, I don't know. I was thinking about this over the weekend. Like, what team would really be a good fit for Melo? What team would need Melo? And I thought the Celtics might be a good option, but then another team that I thought about and I really like, but I don't think this is going to happen, is the San Antonio Spurs. I feel like he'd work very well with the Spurs because of how mid-range that they do play, how mid-range oriented they are, and they do obviously step back and shoot threes as well, and recently they've shot more threes in the last couple of seasons than they ever have before, but I feel like he'd really work well on the Spurs. I don't know if they'd ever consider signing him, but if you're the San Antonio Spurs, you have to consider all options at this point too, being 8-7, possibly missing the playoffs for the first time in like 20 years. But those are really the only two teams I could think about that I wouldn't be mad if he went to.
I got one that's going to take you on a doozy.
What's that? Well, and the Knicks. I think the Knicks should be considered as well.
How about the Shanghai Sharks?
I've heard that too.
I
don't think he's signing overseas.
I think Jimmy Fredette needs some help over there. He's getting
I
75
don't
points
think
in
Melo's-
losses. He
What
needs
was
some
that
help.
like? They said something like the Puerto Rican team wants him to be
I
on their
did see that.
national team. I was like,
I
what?
think JJ Barea said that.
He did.
But no, you look, like you said earlier, man. He's got the back down, spin move type of game. Melo has some of the best footwork I've ever seen in NBA history.
He's like a mid-range type of dude. And what haven't we seen him do the last 2 seasons? Mid-range. He's been a 3-point type of guy the last couple of years, and I feel like he just needs to go back to what worked the best for him in the best part of his career.
I think it's the same situation if, say, like Kobe Bryant wanted to continue playing today. Kobe Bryant, of course, would have to become a role player on the team, but it just wouldn't work. His stock would go down as a player and what he's done over the course of his career. And I think it's the same thing for Melo. He's trying to transition into a spot-up shooter, and like we say, he's got some of the best footwork. Those feet need to move, man. He can't just spot it up because clearly that's not his game. It's taking him out of his game. Now, he can still hit a three no matter what, but he's more of create his own shot and do whatever it takes to get his own bucket because, look, he's one of the greatest PBGs of all time, premier bucket getters, but he's the one that needs to create it for himself. So I don't know. I don't see a situation right now in the NBA. Maybe he just needs to take a couple years off, do him a little Michael Jordan, go play some baseball.
All right. At this point in his career, I'm not too sure about that.
Go play golf.
It's been kind of a sad demise of Melo over the last couple seasons, something I didn't think would happen at the end of his career. I felt like his game would kind of be fit to be well in this NBA, but obviously we haven't seen that work out well for him. Let's move on just a little bit. Talk about some surprise teams that we've seen this season. We talked about this on the show as well, but for those of you who don't listen to the show and only get to listen to the podcast, we figure we might as well talk about some of those surprise teams on the show as well. So, Perry, who are some of your biggest surprise teams or surprise even just team of the season so far this year?
So far, my surprise team is the Los Angeles Clippers. They are sitting at 8-5. I think I said the other day, I don't know if they played another game yet, but, man, this team is really good. I love what
10-5 right
10-5. They won 2 games since I last talked about them. That's showing you how good they really are because Doc Rivers is doing an amazing job with this team. A bunch of role players. There's not one superstar on this team, in my opinion. You got Tobias Harris, who's giving you superstar numbers and 28 points per game, but I don't think by any means he's going to make an all-star team. You got Lou Will, 6 man like Lou Will. You know what he does every single night. He gets you a bucket. Got a game winner against the Warriors the other night whenever they was arguing against each other.
Got another one against the Spurs too.
Exactly. This Clippers team is doing more than what anybody could have probably thought for them.
You know, right now, I checked the NBA Power Rankings earlier today, and the Clippers are number 1 in the NBA Power Rankings. So I think out of the most surprising things we've seen this year, I think if you would have told me before the season started that midway through November that the Clippers would be the number 1 power ranking team right now on NBA.com, I'd be pretty surprised. But that's exactly where they're sitting right now. And I actually really do like this Clippers team. I feel like there's a lot to like. They're obviously one of the better teams in the Western Conference right now, sitting in the top 4. I think they're tied for 3rd place right now in the Western Conference at 10-5. They have the same amount of losses as the Golden State Warriors do. So I think that's something that a lot of us didn't see coming before the season started. But they have enough money this offseason to sign 2 max players. They got a lot of guys on their team that are in a contract year and playing for a new contract, so they're going to be playing extra hard, and it's really worked out well for them so far. I really don't think there's one bad contract on this entire team. As I talked about on the show as well, you got a lot of people in contract years. Tobias Harris playing out of his mind, Boban Marjanovic playing amazing this season, Teodosic, Pat Beverly, and Bob Mute, Marcin Gortat. All these guys are on a contract season. All these guys are going to be playing for new money, so they're playing as hard as they possibly can to get that money. And then they're guys that they have booked for the future. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, probably one of the best rookies this year, probably top 3, probably top 4 rookies this season. They got him for the next 4 years. Lou Williams, he's on a contract for the next 3 years past this year. And then Danilo Gallinari playing out of his mind. He's signed to next season as well. So if you're a free agent and you're considering all your options this summer, I think after you're seeing how great this Clippers team and all these role players have played together this season, if they can keep this going, the Clippers got to be one of your top options because they have enough money to sign 2 max free agents this summer, so they could get Kawhi and another big free agent. They could get Klay Thompson and Boogie Cousins. They could get two different guys to pair along with all these role players that could really make this team successful for the future. They have a great owner. They got great leadership with Doc Rivers and Jerry West. I think this Clippers franchise, for one of the first times in history, is really looking up and up and up, and there's almost no downside to this roster right now.
That's crazy. We just act like the Chris Paul and Blake Griffin era never happened. That's crazy.
And it's almost like this team right now is like the most exciting Clippers team we've seen ever.
It's the
really.
energy, man. Steve Ballmer, he started it, and now all the players are using it. But don't be surprised when you see Kawhi Leonard playing for the Clippers next year.
It's like it's too early, I think, at this point to know if Steve Ballmer's a great owner yet, but he's on the path to be an amazing owner right now.
I love what he's doing.
Just with the energy that he brings and how passionate and excited he is for the Los Angeles Clippers. I feel like out of any owner they could have possibly gotten, they're not getting some old 85-year-old white dude. They're not getting no slave owner like they had in the past. They're getting Steve Ballmer, who's like really passionate about the organization.
And also the addition of Jerry West. He coming from a winning organization in the Golden State Warriors, so he's going to bring that winning mentality towards this team.
Very smart basketball mind too.
Man, I love this team, man, and I think Kawhi, man, he's going to love this team too.
If you walk into a Clippers meeting and you got Jerry West, one of the greatest NBA players of all time. You saw what he did with the Warriors. You got a passionate owner like Steve Ballmer, and then you got the money that they can offer you in the offseason. You got all these role players that they can put around you. I don't know how you wouldn't accept a deal with the Clippers. There's really a lot of positive to this Clippers team. They got a lot of positive energy, and there's definitely a lot to like right now.
It's that love that energy, baby.
It really is, man. All right, so some other surprise teams we've gotten this season. I feel like one of the biggest surprise teams so far is the Memphis Grizzlies. Not necessarily that they couldn't get it done. It's just that they're almost surprising just because they were very bad last year because of Gasol and Conley being out, and now Gasol and Conley are back, and they kind of got everything rolling again right now. They're sitting at 10-5 in the Western Conference. This is kind of the perfect scenario for them, and they've gotten a lot of big wins so far this season. 3-game winning streak right now, and definitely a lot's looking up right now for the Memphis Grizzlies at this point.
I saw a tweet the other day that said the Memphis Grizzlies are a team that you wouldn't be surprised if they beat the best team in the Western Conference in the second round, and it's a team that you're not surprised if they lose to a worse team in the second round. They're just like in between, but they've always been there.
Every single season,
They made a run against the Spurs in the Western Conference Finals, I think back in 2014 or 13, and then they always gave the Thunder a run for their money whenever they had Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant and James Harden. So this team has just always been together, and like you said earlier, Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, they've just been holding the fort down. They used to have Zach Randolph, but he's not there anymore. So they've just been adding new pieces. And
I really like the addition of Jaren Jackson Jr. this year. I feel like he's been a very big piece to them and really helped out with their success. But I think, the biggest part is just getting Conley and Gasol back playing so well together. I feel like that's the biggest thing. I mentioned it on the show. Conley is like the most underrated dude ever, but the most overpaid dude as well too, because he makes like more money than anyone in the NBA, but he's so underrated.
That's the bag.
As a player. That's the bag
definition
right there.
of the bag right there, baby. Get out your bag.
And the Grizzlies are really getting it done right now. I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't really think the Grizzlies are going to be going after a championship this year, so I don't really know what their ownership really wants out of this group of guys, if they're going to be making trades, if they're going to try to make trades to improve their team or get their team worse. I don't really know what direction this organization's going for right now. Either way, they're sitting in a really good spot.
If you had to pick a team for the next 5 years, and you can only pick between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Los Angeles Clippers,
I'm taking the Clippers.
Hey, get that bag, baby.
They're out there in Los Angeles. I think that's big enough right there. And they're getting a new arena, I think, in like 3 years too. So they're not going to be with the Lakers anymore. They're getting a brand new arena. I feel like that's definitely going to be.
Do they deserve it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
They definitely deserve it.
They cover up.
The Clippers are on the up and up. You're telling me you want to go to a small market and not go to Los Angeles of all teams?
I'm saying, do they deserve a new arena?
Yeah, they do.
Whoa.
They're stuck in the same arena as the historic Lakers. Get out of here.
Whose fault is that?
It's their own fault, but
Exactly.
that's why they're getting out. They don't want to be in the same conversation anymore.
Hey, the Clippers do not deserve a new arena, but they do deserve Kawhi Leonard. And I'm excited because you heard it here first. So when everybody's shocked that Kawhi goes to Los Angeles and it's not the Lakers, just know that Perry the third said it here first.
Hey, so those are a few of our surprise teams right there.
And don't sleep on my Kings either, man.
Hey, we're not sleeping on the Kings, but when we did the show on Thursday, the Kings were sitting at 7th in the Western Conference, and ever since the show, now they're down to 12th. So they've fallen down 5 spots here in the last 4 days.
Don't act like we can't win 2 games and be the number 1 seed.
You're right. Hey, well, if y'all won 2 games right now, you'd be
considering that other teams are losing.
You go back up 4. You go back up 4 spots if you won 2 games in a row right now. So
and that's other teams losing too, so we could be even higher.
The Western Conference is wide open, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, I just want to get into a couple surprise players this season.
Okay.
If you want to talk about surprise players in a good way, you can. But I want to talk about a surprise guy who this season has been playing awful, like just not that good compared to how he was last year, and something that I think a lot of us didn't expect coming into this season, and that's Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell's play has been way down this season for the Utah Jazz, and this is a team that in this Western Conference I feel like should be sitting at 2nd or 1st in the Western Conference, right there with the Trailblazers, or even better, because I feel like they were one of the top teams in the West last season, probably the 2nd, 3rd best team in the West, and right now they're sitting at 8-8 in the 11th spot, and I think it all rests on Donovan Mitchell's shoulder because they got no one else out there on their team that can go and get a bucket for you.
Hey, a couple nights ago he did have 28.
He had 28 on 35 shots,
and that's fine.
No, that's not fine. That's not what they want.
They got a dub. That's what they want. You gotta do whatever it takes, baby.
Hey, I think one of the biggest things you don't want is Donovan Mitchell going out there and shooting 40 shots and only making 8 of them. You know, I think you want him shooting smarter shots to try to get it done for your team. And I don't know, Donovan Mitchell this season has turned into a guy that's just chucked it at the rim and hopes it goes in, and it hasn't really worked out well for him. As we've seen right now, they're 8-8, a team that really is basically the same team that they had from last season that was so successful at the end of the season. You'd think they'd be able to continue that success throughout this season, but on the shoulders of Donovan Mitchell, it just isn't happening this season. I feel like it's a little bit of a sophomore slump that he's going through.
Well, I don't think he really had a rookie slump. I think his play was pretty steady. I don't think he had as many triple-doubles as Ben Simmons, of course, but maybe, like you said, it's the sophomore wall that he's hit, and it's kind of struggling to get out on the right foot. But I expect for this Jazz team to pick it up eventually just because they have some consistency within their team. So I wouldn't expect for this slump to continue, but I am shocked about the start that they have gotten off to because I had them finishing in, I think, probably top 6 seeds for the playoffs this year, but now I don't even know if they're going to make the playoffs. But I expect for Donovan Mitchell to pick it up. I love the drive he has, and as long as he keeps the right mindset.
I mean, I literally thought they'd be the 3rd team in the West. I was really all for them, and then it just hasn't really worked out that well this season.
Let's compare it, though. Let's be honest. Mm-hmm. Would you be more concerned with Donovan Mitchell having 28 points on 35 shots or 6 points on 4 shots?
I mean, at least he's shooting the ball, but at the same time, I don't expect him not to be shooting.
That's all you can ask for. You got to give yourself a chance to make shots, and that's what he's doing.
I guess. I mean, if you really want to go there at that, but at the same time, I don't really see how it's really working out right now for the Jazz. I mean, but you got a player out there that's been surprising for you?
Good or bad?
Good or bad, either way.
I'm gonna go with Kemba Walker, man. Had 60 the other night. And I think it's just because he's pretty relevant in my mind right now. But, man, he's just really out there getting buckets. He really doesn't care, man. I was surprised that he got 60. I didn't know if that little body was capable of 60, but he definitely proved me and Jimmy Butler wrong because Jimmy Butler wasn't expecting it either.
You know, he made his first All-Star team last year, and I think that was a big confidence booster for him. I feel bad for Kemba Walker that he kind of signed his big contract a year before the cap ballooned. So right now he's I saw something, he's like the 115th highest paid player in the NBA. So there's so many role players out there making more money than he is. For a guy his caliber, he should be making up there with what the other All-Stars are making, frankly, and he's only making like $8 million a year or something like that compared to what he should be making, over $20 million a year compared to some of these other guys. So either way, though, he's still playing out of his mind. He's trying to get that big contract when his contract does end, and the Hornets have done a lot of disservice to him by surrounding him with a lot of players whose contracts are way bigger than his and who are definitely not as good as he is.
What's wrong with Tony Parker?
Yeah, I'm not talking about Tony Parker. You know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Nicholas Batum. And it's just, I don't know. I feel bad for him that he's been playing so well and that his teammates just aren't picking up the slack for him. But Tony Parker, man, he's been playing, or Kemba Walker, man, this year playing out of his mind. 60 points last game against the 76ers.
I'll tell you one player who has disappointed me, though. I did want to touch on that, and that's James Harden, man. He is averaging 27 points, and I just don't like the way that he started off the season. I think not only on the court, but off the court.
That's like a team thing, too, really.
I think he's the leader of this team. I know, of course, you have Chris Paul, but as the best player of the team coming off an MVP season, you expect a player to build on that. When Curry won the MVP, he went on to have a unanimous season, well, being an MVP. So I just expected a lot more from James Harden. Now we have Carmelo off the team. He's supposed to be the leader of this team, and he's really disappointing me. Like I said, I get that he's averaging close to 28 points per game, but at the same time, you got to be a better leader for this team, especially if you're trying to win a championship.
And the Rockets right now, they've won 4 in a row. Ever since they got Melo off the team, they haven't lost. So 8-7 right now. They're moving up in the standings, but that's kind of one thing I want to talk about too, is how close the Western Conference is overall. Right now, between the number 1 seed right now, the Trailblazers sitting at 11-5, and the 14 seed, the Timberwolves, at 7-10. There's a 4.5 game difference separating 1 and 14 right now. So all these teams are so closely bunched up right now. For the 1 through 8 right now, you got the Blazers, the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Clippers, the Thunder, the Nuggets, the Lakers, and the Pelicans. And then after that, you have the Spurs, the Rockets, the Jazz, the Kings, the Mavericks, and the Timberwolves. So you're probably going to have 3 teams minimum in the Western Conference with a darn good record that should be making the playoffs that aren't going to be making the playoffs. Right now, Perry, out of the Spurs, the Rockets, and the Jazz, I think those are probably the 3 biggest outsiders right now. They're sitting right outside. The Kings don't count, man, all right? The Kings are still, the Kings are still a year or 2 away at least, all right?
As long as you know, baby.
You know they're still away. But right now, out of the Spurs, the Rockets, and the Jazz, you have to assume that the Rockets are going to get in the playoffs, right, by the end of the season. And the Spurs, they haven't missed the playoffs in the last 20 years. So you'd almost assume that the Spurs would probably make a run up there in the playoffs. And then you got the Jazz, who last year were, what they finished, the 3rd, 4th seed in the Western Conference. So you feel like they should probably be due for a run. But if those teams make it in, then who's going to be making it out? Out of all those teams that are in there, the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Thunder, the Warriors, the Trailblazers, which one of these teams is going to be falling?
I'll tell you the 3 teams that are most likely to miss the playoffs.
Okay.
And that is the Memphis Grizzlies, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Denver Nuggets. Because let's not forget, we are still talking about the Wild, Wild West. So let's be honest. These teams, they're going to start to get tired going against other West teams, some of the better West teams, especially like a team like the Warriors, once they get Stephen Curry back. And then I expect teams like Portland and New Orleans to continue their run just because of how good they are. But Memphis, Los Angeles Clippers, and who else? I said Denver Nuggets. I expect for them to come back to reality. You know that song, Back to Life? They're going to be playing that in the arena because they're going to be losing eventually. Now, my Kings, on the other hand, don't be surprised if we shoot up in the race. All right? But as far as those other 8 teams, I expect for the Grizzlies, the Clippers, and the Nuggets to be sitting outside looking in just because they're not there yet. And then the other teams who have more experience of being there, they're most likely going to make a good run because it's still early in the season. Just like when we was talking about the Orlando Magic earlier, it's still early. Do not get all crazy about certain teams just because they have a good start, and don't get down on good teams just because they have a bad start. Just give it some time, and everything will even out. Talk to me in January about who is going to be making the playoffs, and I will let you know then better than the idea that I have now.
You know, if I'm looking at any of these teams and I feel like, and if I'm looking at teams that I feel like might be on the outside, I feel like it's going to be very hard for the Pelicans, mostly because they're one Anthony Davis injured for 2.5 weeks, injury away from not making the playoffs at all.
Hey, man, no bad juju. That's my MVP.
Whatever, man. All right? I just feel like the Pelicans right now, I feel like they're going to make it if they got everyone healthy, but they are one Anthony Davis 3-week sprained ankle away from missing the playoffs.
And that's the thing. I think that Mirotic, Drew Holiday, those guys, I think they can hold down the fort.
I don't think they're going to be holding down the fort when you got all these other teams pushing in from behind that don't have injured guys.
But let's be honest. If it was to happen, an injury, knock on wood, if it was to happen, it would most likely happen in the second half of the season because Anthony Davis starts to wear down. But then they'll be going against East teams, though. So I expect for them to still be competitive against East teams and win certain ball games.
And then somehow, I think my other two teams that I have, I'd probably include the Nuggets in there just because of what we saw from last season and them not making it. And then if I had to pick another team, I'm looking at the Clippers, Grizzlies, and Trailblazers, and I really think even though they're sitting at first, I think the Blazers, if I had to pick three teams, I don't think they're going to slide out. But if I had to pick three teams that are in there right now that would slide out, I'd pick the Trailblazers. So
you think
the
Memphis Grizzlies are making the playoffs?
I'm more confident right now that the Grizzlies are going to make the playoffs more than the Trailblazers.
I wish the audience could see my face right now.
I'm
flabbergasted.
I'm 100% with you. I've never been super high on this Trailblazers team. There's been a lot of ups and downs in the last 5 years with this Trailblazers team, and I've never been that confident about them doing anything. Whereas when the Grizzlies,
but you're more confident about the Memphis Grizzlies doing something.
When the Grizzlies have had guys healthy, especially their top two guys in Conley, if they keep the same roster, because I'm not 100% sure they're going to keep all these guys together either. But if you can keep everyone together right now, these exact teams exactly the same, I'm more confident that the Grizzlies would make the playoffs more than the Trailblazers
would you like to bet another chicken sandwich?
I think both these teams are going to make the playoffs, so I'm not even going to bet anything because I feel like they're both going to make it.
I'm just checking.
But I'm more confident that the Grizzlies would over the Trailblazers just because of all the ups and downs. This is a Trailblazers team that's been together for so long now, but they've never been able to put together an amazing team. You thought last season you'd be like, dang, I think at one point they were second in the West, and you're like, wow, this Trailblazers team's finally really emerging as the real second best team in the Western Conference. And I love Damian Lillard too. But then near the end of the season, it was just they couldn't put anything together. They really struggled. I think they fell down all the way to 6th or 7th last year by the end of the season. It's like they just can never figure it out.
But let's talk about that. If they do fall down to 6 or 7, just think about how many games it took for them to fall down. 1 or 2. It's not like they lost 10 in a row.
But still, this is a team that I feel like that's been together long enough that should have been able to figure it out right now. Like the Grizzlies, they had Conley and Gasol out for one season. They got them back with a lot of new younger guys on the roster. And they're already basically back to where they were before Conley and Gasol got injured in the first place.
Well, I think the way the West is set up, you need at least 3 pieces in order to come out the West. At least in order to contend with the Golden State Warriors. They now have 5 pieces.
I don't think either of these teams are going to contend at all. But I
always saw the Blazers as a team that would just be a good second-round team. I always said I think they're one piece away from being a real contender. I always thought it was Melo. Now I'm not for sure about that. I don't think he should go anywhere near the Portland Trail Blazers. But I always said that this team was a good second-round team. So where they're sitting right now, I'm not surprised. I do not expect them to finish number 1 or number 2. But if they do, I won't be surprised either. It's just that type of team. I still think they're one piece away. I don't know what piece that could be. But
this is really crazy. I just can't believe. I'm looking down right now the Rockets are sitting at 10, and the Rockets are obviously making the playoffs. But it's when I look at the teams in the playoffs, I'm thinking one of these teams is really going to go out, and possibly 3 of these teams are going to have to move out there's going to be some teams that miss the Western Conference that are some all-time biggest miss of the playoffs teams. This is really, I think, the deepest Western Conference that there's ever been in the entire NBA.
And here's the thing about the start of the NBA seasons usually, like the Orlando Magic and Memphis Grizzlies and Clippers right now, is that, the teams are so excited to start the season as opposed to good teams who expect to be in the playoffs later on in the season. So they just kind of start differently. Now, as the season goes on, the good teams start to figure it out and they start to put more energy towards games. And the bad teams, they start coming back to reality. And that's what I think is going to happen with the Memphis Grizzlies and the Clippers and Orlando Magic. I just think that these teams are going to come back to reality eventually, and they're going to fall out of the playoff race. So that's why I'm not too high on the Memphis Grizzlies right now or the Los Angeles Clippers, even though I said that they're my most surprising team. But I do not think that either of these teams will make the playoffs.
I think it's going to be close, man, especially since all these teams are close now. We saw them being close last year at the end of the season. Obviously, the Nuggets missed the playoffs. I can't remember the other team that was right below the Nuggets last season, but that was close too. They almost made it in. They were just a game out. And I think this season we're going to see the same thing, but except instead of 2 teams barely missing the playoffs, you're going to have 3-4 teams barely missing the playoffs. Because, I mean, you got the Mavericks down there, too, as well. They're sitting 1 game under 500. They've won 4 in a row. They've looked awesome in their last 4 games. They got a lot of great pieces on their team, a lot of great young guys, a lot of great veterans. So, I mean, I think it's really going to come down to the wire right now between all these guys. One out in the Eastern Conference, on the other hand, I feel like it's going to be a little bit more cut and dry in terms of the teams that are going to be making the playoffs. One team that's not going to be making the playoffs is the Washington Wizards right now. They're sitting at 5-11. Somehow they've managed to win a few games now in their last 10, 4-6 in their last 10 right now, but they've lost 2 in a row. And their management kind of announced today that John Wall and Bradley Beal are both probably going to be on the outside looking in, and they're probably going to be on the trading block here in a couple weeks. And they've kind of let other teams know that John Wall and Bradley Beal are available.
I said it last season. I said that it was time to blow this team up.
I think we've said it for 3 seasons now.
And this team has just been horrible. They have not lived up to their expectations. We expected this team to contend with LeBron a couple years ago whenever he went against the Celtics in the conference finals and when they had Isaiah Thomas. But, man, this team has really never lived to the expectations that we thought they would. They had John Wall, Bradley Beal, Marcin Gortat. I thought it was a good little mix that they had, but as far as when it came to the playoffs, they could never put it together. And that's why a lot of people compared this team to the Portland Trailblazers, and I do see the comparisons, but at least the Trailblazers are contending at least just a little bit. I know they got swept last year in the conference semifinals, but this Washington Wizards team, what did they do last year? They was sitting in Honolulu just chilling. I don't know what was going on with this team. There is no reason that they should not be at least competitive in the East. They were for a couple years ago, but now they're not even in the playoff race anymore. And like you said earlier, it's time for them to blow it up. They've made all their pieces available, and I think it's the right move. Now, I don't know how their play will be because with a lot of players, whenever it comes out that it's time to make trades, they either play really good or they play really bad. And that's just because of their names being made available. But I expect for John Wall and Bradley Beal to, have some good games just to kind of build their stock and going into these trades.
Yeah, I don't know how many teams are really going to be wanting these guys, mostly because, like I've mentioned before, John Wall's contract is insanely huge. It's right around Mike Conley's contract. I think they basically have the same contract. So I don't know where is a good spot for him, especially with teams that have enough cap room to get him on their roster.
Sacramento.
Yeah,
got some spots, baby.
They ain't going after John Wall.
Why not?
Because they're not. They're not.
No, we don't need them. We got De'Aaron Fox.
All right. So, but I don't know where else.
Send them to the Bulls, baby.
Yeah, right. I don't know where else really a good fit for these guys, but obviously I don't think they're going to be on the team by the end of the season. At least they shouldn't be, because it's not working out right now for them in Washington, and it hasn't worked out for the last couple seasons. There's been a lot of issues that they've had, and obviously this is a continuing issue that they got Gortat off the team, still didn't help. I think you mentioned the Blazers. I mean, kind of almost the same situation. The Blazers getting swept last year in the first round. Wizards, they can barely even make it to the first round to begin with. Obviously, I don't think that's going to happen this season. I feel like they're definitely on the outside looking in, and there's a lot of issues right now in Washington, so
don't be surprised if Boogie Cousins and John Wall end up on the same team.
Yeah, we've been saying that for a couple of years now, but it's a possibility in the offseason. It could possibly work out. So, I don't know. I thought Boogie Cousins might be a good fit out in Washington. Earlier, maybe 2 years ago, I was thinking that might be a good option, but now at this point, I just don't know how that's going to work out. So,
hey, Bradley Beal to the Memphis Grizzlies.
Hey, we'll see. I've been talking about John Wall to the Grizzlies. I thought that might be a good option because you can get John Wall and Conley just kind of do a flip-flop.
I don't like it.
But I don't know. I feel like it'd be decent if you're Washington and looking for another high-quality point guard that's not going to cause us much drama.
I don't think John Wall would be a good fit with Marc Gasol. I think that'd be a problem.
Oh, I mean, I think you got to move Gasol too.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I don't think if you're the Grizzlies, I think you're either going to go for the playoffs, so you're going to go for losing as many games as possible. And I feel like if you're going to trade Conley off the team, you're going to have to trade Gasol off the team as well.
I don't think Scott Brooks really fit with the personnel of John Wall and Bradley Beal either.
Oh, I think Scott Brooks is a horrible coach. I think him and Billy Donovan are two of the worst coaches in the league right now.
Hey, let's not forget
it's like every coach that's out here on the Thunder is just some of the worst coaches of all time, and the Wizards still pick the man up.
Hey, Scott Brooks took him to the finals, didn't he?
To who?
The Thunder.
He did?
Yeah.
Well,
2012.
Oh, yeah, that's
Come
right.
on,
That's
man.
right.
Give him put some respect on his name.
Hey, Ty Lue took the Cavs to a
That's
championship.
completely different.
So.
That's completely different. My man rested 10 games because he was tired.
And he still took him to the championship. So that's why sometimes I think coaches sometimes coaches are starting to like matter less and less. I feel like you could almost throw anyone on like the Golden State Warriors and they'd be successful like anytime.
I don't agree.
I feel like coaches are big, but some coaches, if you have enough talent, it doesn't matter. Like I feel like some teams keep coaches alive for long. Like Frank Vogel out in Indianapolis. People thought he was like an amazing coach back in the day. Now he's been horrible on the Magic for 3 years.
Hey, they're starting off pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, or weren't you the one saying 10 minutes ago that they're starting off good, but just wait till they lose every
Vogel's
game.
a horrible coach. I'll tell you in January.
So Scott Brooks.
But no, I think certain times like during the playoffs, whenever Steve Kerr told Kevin Durant a story about Michael Jordan, that's a story that another coach can't tell you. So I just think coaches fit to the personnel of their players, and sometimes a coach like Dave Fizdale, I think they're better off at more.
I mean, there is great coaches, but there's also coaches
they still matter.
There's also coaches that are bad. They're just on a good enough team with a good enough roster to make it seem like they're better than they really are.
So Steve Kerr, a good coach?
He's a good coach.
Is he a great coach, or is it just because of the talent?
In my opinion, it's like I haven't seen Steve Kerr coach at another high level. Like I want to see him with a different team, like or with some of these guys leaving their roster to still see if he can be successful with guys that are not as good as he has right now.
Hey, it's one of those things. What if? We'll never know, to be honest.
I think we might. I don't know. He's had back issues, so I don't know if maybe once this team kind of fizzles out, if he just retires from coaching.
Yeah.
But if he does continue coaching, I'd love to see how good of a coach he can be. I don't know. If I was Steve Kerr, I would almost just like stop coaching after this Warriors team fizzled out, because then there'd be nothing bad. Like, he'd always be known as a great coach.
Exactly.
If
he does that, in my opinion, he'll be the greatest coach of all time.
Of all time?
I promise. That technique of getting
that's almost worse than my Grizzlies making the playoffs.
No, he would be the greatest coach of all time.
Of all time.
He'll probably have one of the greatest winning percentages, won the most amount of rings in the shortest amount of time. Just think about that. He'll be the greatest coach of all time.
I don't know how you could argue him over like Phil Jackson or over.
He had seasons where he lost.
Or like. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's just because I don't know. Steve Kerr would not be the greatest.
For
coach
all the
of
people
all
that
time.
love numbers, look into the numbers, and if Steve Kerr decides to retire after this Warriors dynasty is over, he will be the greatest coach of all time. It'll be hard to dispute it.
I think it'll be pretty easy to dispute it, unless you're looking strictly from numbers.
Just think about Joel Embiid's comment about being Rookie of the Year a couple years ago. Do you want somebody who's doing less and more time, or more and less time?
I mean, you're going to be looking at a guy that has only coached amazing players throughout his career. I think to be known as a great coach, you have to coach players who aren't as great and then be successful with them over time. Kind of like we saw.
I forgot that Andrew Bogut was a superstar. He got him a couple rings, didn't he?
Yeah, but I didn't say every player on the roster was amazing. I just said that they still had Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Andre Iguodala.
What's Harrison Barnes doing right now?
Like I said, they had Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Andre Iguodala, and you have Harrison Barnes is averaging 22 points a game right now.
And Cleveland had LeBron last year and they lost.
And
so talent doesn't mean anything. It's all about coaching, baby. I'm on the train.
All right. Well, Perry thinks it's all about coaching. I think coaching matters, but not that much. But that's actually.
No, I think coaches fit the personnel of their players. I think Steve Kerr fits the personnel of his players really well.
I do think so too, but I don't think he's the greatest of all time.
If he retires, it would be hard to dispute it. I don't know if I would agree with it, but it'll be hard to dispute it.
All right. Well, that's Perry's opinion. Hard to dispute. Steve Kerr being the greatest coach of all time.
Time for a disclaimer.
All right. Well, that's actually all we have right now here on the Droppin Dimes podcast. We are out of topics right now.